On today's episode, I interview Zach Schleien. He is the co-founder and CEO of Fiteroff. It's a new dating app that is taking off like a rocket. It's a video chat-based dating app, so it's not a swipe left or swipe right type thing. The most important part of this interview is the way that he talks about attempting a new business, because he tried several times and they didn't succeed. They weren't successful. And the way he glosses over failure, he's like, yeah, I did this, and then I tried a paleo muffin company, that didn't work, and then I went on to this. It is the true entrepreneurial spirit, and you'll hear how casually he glosses over that, as in, yeah, that's just how it is when you're being an entrepreneur. You got to try lots of things, and a lot of things will fail, and then you'll find the one that'll crush, which he has with Fiteroff, this dating app. And then in the latter part of the interview, we get back to that whole thing around trauma and how trauma in your life can drive you to achieve. And it's not a bad thing. So, boy, it's becoming a little bit of a theme with some of these very successful entrepreneurs and myself, where you harness that to create great things and to drive yourself to achieve. So enjoy this interview. Zach is the CEO and co-founder of Fiteroff, a video speed dating app that has been featured in the New York Times, on the BBC, and hit #1 on Product Hunt. Zach started his online dating career by launching Romp, a dating publication that covered dating hacks and apps for the modern dater. And after selling the blog, he launched Hinge's subreddit. He then pursued his master's, went on to work for Johnson & Johnson, built a bunch of online product communities there, and now he's founded Fiteroff. He wanted to create an app that helps people connect on a deeper level, beyond just swiping through profiles. It's been a huge success, and Fiteroff has already facilitated over 350,000 video speed dates. And in November of 2021, they received a $2.4 million investment from a Fortune 500 company. So he's very passionate about his technology, health, and helping people build real connections. And we're going to learn all about it today. So, Zach, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks for having me on.
You betcha. That was a mouthful, man. You've done a lot. You've done a lot already. That was fun. So I love chatting with founders and entrepreneurs, and the audience loves to hear the story. So as a jumping off point, can we start maybe back at the beginning and how what was the first thing to fall, if you will, to start this process towards Fiteroff?
Yeah. So would you like me to share my first endeavor around entrepreneurship?
I love it.
Cool.
I love it.
So originally wanted to go to law school. That's what I was thinking. Ended up working for a very large NFL agent in Atlanta. I was like, I want to do sports law. This is my thing. Started studying to get into law school. And I was like, I don't think this is for me. But I was very driven and ready to get into the field of sports. And that year, I kind of just started a tech startup. It was really random. It was from a class. It was called Begin You, and kind of ran with it and fell in love and kind of put everything else that I was thinking about doing to the side and really just focused on this initiative. Begin You didn't end up working out, but I got an opportunity to go for my master's, started another company. This time it was a paleo muffin company that I started with my mom. That was a lot of fun. So my passions are community and health. Those are like two things that I love.
And when you were younger, if I may ask, when you were younger, like, were you the kid selling lemonade on the just the fact that you're just rambling or going from one to the next is kind of fascinating. Was that always in your blood?
Yeah, it's a good question. So my mom was the entrepreneur. I think when I was younger, I was actually fairly shy. So I didn't really think of myself as entrepreneurial when I was younger. It kind of just happened when I started Begin You and just fell in love creating things.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So you start the paleo muffin company, and then where do we go from there?
Yeah, and then from there, didn't end up working out. Started a mental health community, and around the same time, I joined corporate America. But the goal was to always leave corporate America to have a startup being my full-time thing, and then around the same time, I started Fiteroff, so a little after, and that's the thing that kind of allowed me to leave corporate America and go full-time and really pursue this dream of doing my own thing.
Yeah. So I'm a 53-year-old guy that's married, and so I never experienced any of the online dating. And I used to have to meet people the old-fashioned way, if you will, the long and hard way. And so this whole space fascinates me, absolutely fascinates me. And I have a lot of younger people that work for me and have shared really how it helps them go through the process. So were you like an online dating consumer? Like, how does one come up with, you know what, I'm going to build a better mousetrap for online dating, or not online dating, but a dating app?
Yeah, so I was a consumer, but also I ran a dating blog. So in between all those initiatives, I started a dating blog called Top Romp. I just wanted to share my insights
Yeah.
around the industry. And I also started Hinge's subreddit that got quite large when it comes to a community. And I always noticed that swiping was not a mechanism that I really loved, and messaging was not a mechanism that I really loved. And I noticed the video was something that provided a much more efficient and authentic experience. And that's kind of what I ran with Fiteroff. And it's evolved a lot since kind of that initial idea of getting two people on a video chat.
Okay. So for people of my generation, well, that's not fair. For people that haven't been single in a while, walk us through what is industry standard, and then how Filter Off is different, if you could.
Yeah, sure. Typically, you're presented a profile. You could swipe right or left. If it's a match, so both people swipe right, you're entered into a chat where you could then message and then
Okay.
eventually coordinate a time to meet up in person.
The Filter Off, I would imagine, just from the name also too, because I've heard, even in lay press, where heavily edited photos and all kinds of filters and everything on some of these other apps. So it may not be the actual representation of the person you're about to meet. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the challenge with typical apps is you meet them in person and you're like, oh, snap, this is not who I thought I was meeting. But aside from even just the physical, it's also the emotional, which cannot be portrayed in a picture or through messaging.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Okay. Okay. So then Filter Off is using a pre-recorded video, live video. What is it?
Yeah. So the biggest difference is when you match with someone, you're actually expected to set up a video chat with them or the match expires. So that's the biggest
Hmm.
difference. And then more recently, we've also introduced a matchmaking service. So instead of you setting up those dates, you actually have a matchmaker who's sending you profiles. If you're interested, they reach out to them on your behalf. And then if it's a good fit after they vet that individual, they'll actually coordinate a video chat between you and your match.
That sounds awesome. I mean, really, that seems like it fills a need that takes some of the the BS out of the whole thing. I love that. I love that. When you started Filter Off, was this because you've started so many things? Was it the intent was, I'm going to go all in on this, and this is going to be a big build for me, or was it still maybe a side project and just trying many things? Because what I love about what I've heard so far is, and this is where entrepreneurs really differentiate themselves, is they're not afraid to fail. They'll start, and I'm going to try a lot of things, and I know some of these aren't going to work out. And I love how you just said, yeah, that didn't work, so then I went on to this, which is true entrepreneurism. Um, but with Filter Off, was it more from the beginning? Did you feel, I've got something here?
With Filter Off, it was always something I wanted to do. I always wanted to build a dating app, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to build a dating app just to build a dating app.
Okay.
Like it was, I think when I realized, hey, video is the answer. And then when we launched right before the pandemic, it kind of like was kind of flat. Like people were like, this is kind of weird. I don't feel comfortable video chatting with a stranger. But then the pandemic happened, and that's when it really got popular and it got covered in a lot of the major publications because people were just stuck at home.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about the pandemic and how that, because I've talked with a lot of people who had to date through the pandemic, which was quite challenging. And, the apps were really the only way you could meet people and start a relationship. Did that change? Did the pandemic change the strategy of Filter Off at all? Did you find yourself pivoting at all with your strategy based on the pandemic?
Yeah, we shifted to a very community focused app. So a lot of different communities who weren't able to bring their members together we switched our platform to be very focused to help them facilitate romantic connection for their members.
Can you talk more about that then, just to clarify on that?
Yeah, so we had different communities that hosted private events, like virtual speeding events on our platform for their members. So they would have these like 400-person video speed dating sessions, and you would just do like round robin. So you'd go through like 10 different rounds, and then by the end, maybe 4 of them were good matches. And then after that, you would video chat or message.
Cool. Okay. And is there one thing you said that was not lost on me, because I've studied marketing and human behavior for 30 some years now, is if you have a match, you have to set up a video, or you're encouraged to set up a video chat, or that match expires. So it adds some scarcity and urgency into the process. How have you been able to, I guess, did you run experiments to find out what the right amount of time is to optimize that length of time? How did that work? I'm just fascinated by the process.
Yeah, we chose 5 days because we understand people are like busy and it's hard to like make a date that night. We even experimented like, let's do it 24 hours, but sometimes people can't. So that's why we chose 5 days. The thing that we actually experimented more so was the time of the video date. So the video speed date, now it's 4 minutes in length. If you work with our matchmaker, it's 10 minutes long because it's much more curated and vetted.
Yeah.
However, when we first started Fiteroff, the length of the speed date was 60 seconds, which that was too fast.
Yeah.
Then we switched it to 90 seconds, and then 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, and now it's at 4. And we realized 4 is kind of the sweet spot. 5, it starts getting a little much. If you're not a good fit, you're like, let me get off this call. So we found 4 was kind of the sweet spot.
I love that. I love the experience. That's the coolest thing about technology and the real-time A/B testing and experimentation to find out where that's actually at. If you can speak to authenticity, the word authenticity is a big part of your brand and in the spirit of your brand. Can you speak to how intentional you've been about that? And I guess a bigger question is, how do you keep authenticity within your brand? For the people that are listening that have a business, they're trying to really hone in on what their core message is and their avatar. And as we know in this day and age, authenticity is everything, because people can see it they can see through when you're disingenuous, they can see through it a mile away. If you could elaborate a little bit on the authenticity aspect of Fiteroff.
Yeah, sure. So like video has always been in our DNA, facilitating that video experience. And I think that's the challenge with online dating. Like you don't even know who's behind the profile. And it's really frustrating getting on a first date and realizing like 10 minutes in, like you don't want to be there. And that's why like video is like the no brainer as like your first interaction to see if you do have a good fit. But like a lot of our functionality has helped kind of to ensure authenticity. So like we've rolled out a lot of, for example, like AI detection around scammers. And then when we realize they're a scammer, we put them in like a different dating pool, and then we have them chat with bots. So it really frustrates them. So it doesn't hurt the user experience of our actual users. Because when you just delete scammers, they just come right back up. And that's actually a major issue in our industry when it comes to dating, is scammers or people that are misrepresenting who they are. So that kind of takes away the authentic experience when you have these bad actors.
Yeah. So if we can go back in time and you establish, you start Fiteroff, do you hire out the coding and the building of this? Is this your expertise? Like I'd be fascinated to understand. You have this idea. Hey, video chat, man, that's the future of a dating app. What's step 1? What's step 2? What's step 3? How do you go through that?
Yeah, so I do have a co-founder. He does the product and design, and I do marketing, and I've done the fundraising as a CEO, just continue to grow. And now very oriented around just growing the business in terms of revenue as well. But when we first started, we actually outsourced.
Okay.
And I would say it was a mistake. we quickly realized this is a very janky code base. And then my co-founder kind of rewrote it from scratch, and
Wow.
it became a lot more stable. And he just took over kind of just to make sure everything worked, and he understood everything, and there was no more crazy bugs that were hiding in this old code base. So he kind of took more responsibility.
And how many employees are you at right now?
Yeah, so it's me and my co-founder, and then we have matchmakers on our staff.
Gotcha.
And they're independent contractors.
Okay. And if we can talk about, I think fundraising is a whole different world for the majority of entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs, when they're starting, bootstrap their operations. And when you get to that point where you need to go raise capital and you've raised several $1 million, the stakes go up, the responsibility goes up, the accountability goes up. So talk to me about, one, when did you decide, hey, we need to go raise some capital? And then two, how did you go do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, nowadays is a very different environment than 2 years ago when we raised. So it's much harder now. And I don't know if that's fortunate or unfortunate. But I mean, for me, I was doing this on the side, weekends and evenings. And my goal was, I want to do this full time. Like, imagine where I could take Fiteroff if we were doing this full time. So that was really the motivation behind it. When we raised, we probably had about 50,000 users at that point. So we grew it substantially, bootstrapped, but we weren't really bringing in revenue. It was just users. And back in the day, again, it's a very different environment. Now it's monetization. Then it was growth. So It's just a different paradigm. Now my focus is very focused on, revenue, and building a sustainable business that wins, that provides like a really great experience for users, and that's why we introduced this matchmaking. One of the reasons we introduced this matchmaking service. And then in order to get investors, I mean, it's just based off relationships. Again, back in the day, as in like 2 years ago, there was a lot more angels. I mean, especially because of the crypto boom and much lower interest rates. So it's a totally different environment. But but my first investor, I met him on Clubhouse in a Clubhouse room. And he was interested in learning about me. And it wasn't even about like fundraising. We just spoke and I shared what I was working on. And then we just became friends. And he's like, hey, I want to invest. And at first I was like, yeah, I'm not sure. It's like, I need a lot more capital than that. But I was like, let's do it. And then it kind of just snowballed. It was just like, okay, like 20K turned into 50K, turned to 100K. And then we got to like 2.4 million. So it was a pretty exciting time. And it was that first big check. I was just like, yeah, I could leave. And it was like something I've always been working for. It took me probably 10 years of trying new initiatives until like one finally, and I put in quotes, like worked. So it was super special and it was a milestone. But now like the next milestone, it's not about like raising capital. It's like bringing in a significant amount of revenue to continue growing and building an amazing business. So your milestones or goals change over time. That first goal is just like the freedom to work on my startup solely. So I've developed and learned a lot. So it's been an exciting ride.
So what would you say, and thank you for sharing that. And it's encouraging because, and it is tougher today, but a good product, a great product will always attract capital. It will, there's enough capital on the sidelines that needs to be put to work, but they're not going to throw it around like they were, a couple of years ago. Like you've got to have a solid product, and a great product will always win out. Hey everyone, as you know, I don't have any advertisements nor sponsorships on this podcast. My only ask of you, the listener, is that you share this podcast with someone that you know, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a colleague who may benefit from this information, may benefit from today's guest, from the value that they're sharing with the audience, with you, the listener. When you share this podcast and our audience grows, it allows me to book more and more guests who have a great message, great nuggets of wisdom that you can benefit from, and again, your network can benefit from. So please, right now, push that share button, send it to somebody that you care about, and let's get back to the interview. You've started to go and escalate and grow this business at a pretty steep rate. What have you, as a CEO and a co-founder, what has been one of your bigger learnings that you could share with the audience? That it is something that you realized, okay, this was new. I wasn't ready for this, or wow, this is something that I didn't learn this in my master's degree, or didn't read this in a book.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing now in terms of building a business that provides a lot of value, but also has a way to provide even more substantial value to our users through our matchmaking service. So this is obviously a premium service. My first time, instead of working with subscriptions or a la carte purchases, which range between $2 and $25, now we're working in ranges between $300 and $2,000. So it's quite different. So I've learned a lot how to build systems to drive sales, build a great product to help our matchmaker, and leveraging. I think what's also cool is like it's very tech focused. So it's like we're building the most innovative tech forward matchmaking service in the world. I would argue we have that now.
Wow.
And it's only getting better by the day. So it's just exciting because a year ago it was just focused on the app. And then when the economy really changed, it's like, okay, we have to think differently. And it was difficult, like moving the ship, going from like growth to like, okay, we need to build like a great business with a real business model, revenue model. Yeah. So
we actually got to make money.
Yeah, we need to make money. So we turn the ship around. So it's exciting. And that's what I'm like learning every day when it comes to launches, email campaigns, just the structure on getting sales and building a team to support me, because I can't do it all. Like I started as our matchmaker. And then when I got like 6 clients, I'm like, I don't like customer support. I need to hire someone who like enjoys this stuff. Like I like the initial intake call, but when they're getting upset or they're like, I need this type of person, I'm just like, I don't want to do this. But I was doing it.
Sure.
And I was doing it while I was traveling, which wasn't very fun, but I was like, this is so important. I need to make this succeed. And I did it. And then I ended up hiring someone to kind of replace me. And then I started focusing on ways to scale it.
Yeah. When you talk about the matchmaking service, you kind of light up. It's great to see. Like I can just watch your affect change, and I can tell you're proud of this, which is super, super cool. I'm trying to understand, is it more algorithmic? I don't even know that I butchered that word. Is it based on an algorithm, or is it more human involvement where they're really, or is it both, where they're doing an intake process almost and then feeding it to an algorithm? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a mix of both. So we have different levels of the matchmaking service. So like keep in mind, we have the app. That's like our main product. And then a small percentage of the people from the app use this premium service. To see, and we qualify them, see if they're a good fit, because we want to make sure that they get good results too. And then, they have that initial like video intake call with our matchmaker. And then from there, she starts sending people through the app of potential matches. And there's a lot of AI involved. And it's like our goal is to build where it's very little human intervention, where like one matchmaker could handle a ton of clients.
Yeah.
So we're getting closer. But we're essentially feeding this algorithm based off of the conversation. So it's just like really fascinating, exciting. And I know my co-founder is having a lot of fun because it's like definitely cutting edge and exciting to match people, but in like the way we're doing it in like a very curated way.
As we talked before we went live on this, I share with you that the partner in one of the businesses is a fitness concept. And one thing I didn't expect when I got into this business 6-7 years ago was the impact. I knew it would help people. But I couldn't see it because it hadn't happened yet for me. But to see someone step on the scale and they've lost 30 pounds or 40 pounds and they turn to you in a studio and start crying, and it's tears of joy. It's hard to explain. Like, you realize this is what it's about. It's not about the money. This is what it's about. I can only imagine you've had some people, connect with their lifelong soulmate and moving on to marriage or whatever it may be. Anything, and of course, no names or anything, but anything you can share where you've just had that personal epiphany moment that you've changed someone's life?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you're dealing with like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of users. It's sometimes like hard to quantify it. I think that's the beauty of the matchmaking service. It's so much more intimate where you get to know them.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, I'll get emails being like, hey, just wanted to let you know we're getting married. We had this Greek couple that met in one of our Greek community events during the pandemic, and they just shared like, hey, we're getting married. I had a couple. The man was from Africa, the woman is from the States, and they got married and sent me pictures. It's on our Instagram. So like, yeah, we've created at this point probably 100 marriages at least, and probably thousands of couples, and at this point children. So yeah, it's really cool. It's definitely hard to like sometimes feel it until they let you know. Sure. And they send you photos, and when you see the photos, like, whoa, that's cool. But yeah, it's definitely different when it's at this like macro level, and you have so many users. Because I remember like back in the day when we first started and like a new user joined, we're like, whoa. And now it's just like, yeah, we're getting tons of users every day. I guess that's the experience when we get a new matchmaking client. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you're always evolving.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to share too, like, I love how you've pivoted and you're able to, we talk about something in our business is about ascending a consumer, ascending them. And if you don't have something else for them to purchase, because if they love your product, they love your service, they want to spend money with you. They 20% will want to spend 10x what the average person does if you give them the chance. And the matchmaking just seems like a natural, soft, easy upsell into, you can, spend more with us and also get a lot more value. So it's just a great ascension ladder, I think, that you've built there.
Yeah. I think from a product market fit, what we achieved, and that was kind of the angle, was like democratizing matchmaking, because matchmaking is super expensive.
Yeah.
Like traditional matchmaking will be like $6,000 a month. And I've met matchmakers that charge $50,000 a month. Like really, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with it. People are choosing, but the average consumer cannot afford that. And I wanted to just allow the average consumer to be like, listen, I could spend this. That's why we have 2 plans. And it's like the possibility of changing my life, it's so worth it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we fit in this ecosystem around in matchmaking.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you see, because you're still just, I mean, the jets are firing up, but you're still at that initial stage. Where do you see this going? How big do you forecast this to be? And how do you plan on getting there?
Yeah, I think the app will always be like our core and continue having a great product where people can go on video dates. But the goal is to build essentially like a AI matchmaker. And I don't think we have some time to get there.
Sure.
But that's like one of the goals, to build an AI that can scale, that can support many people at an affordable rate. I think that's how you can like unlock this at scale. Cause it's not, you can't do it if you have only a few matchmakers and hundreds of clients. Like, it's just too much. So it's how do you build this in a way that's scalable? So that's, I think, an exciting step. And that's kind of the North Star has always been just facilitate authentic connections, whatever that looks like. So
Yeah.
there's lots of different paths we can go and services we could offer to help people date better and facilitate those connections.
Yeah. And another concept we talk a lot around here about too is a competitive moat. Building that competitive moat, because it's capitalism in America. If you're making money, there's going to be 20 people behind you lined up to steal your lunch money. Let's go. It's game on. How do you, at your size, compete with publicly traded companies with unlimited budgets to win?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I mean, our moat is essentially the algorithm that we use when it comes to building this AI matchmaker and being so ahead in the industry and feeding this model to kind of run itself. I mean, that's the moat we're creating and the competitive advantage, because for these larger companies, they're not, I don't foresee, I mean, listen, they could do matchmaking. It's always great to have new competitors, because then it probably becomes even more mainstream and more people are accepting to it. But these other dating apps are swipe focused. You saw Tinder, they just opened up a $500 high ticket item. But again, it's you could choose people in your feed to like. It's just like an extension of their product. If we focus more on like the human and the matchmaking experience, and build an incredible algorithm that's scalable, that's automated, like that's how we win.
Yeah. Yeah. And what the hell happened at Bumble? I read something where she just like walked out the front door. Any
Yeah,
inside
Whitney
scoop on
left. I don't know.
that?
Whitney
just
left. I mean, from a publicly traded company, I don't think I mean, you could just look at the data. They haven't done well. So,
no, not at all. Like that's horrific shareholder. I was going to say return. There was no return. It's a negative. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So a couple questions then to kind of round this out. People know that my listeners know I'm an avid reader, and I think that learning, eternal learning. And again, I just want to compliment you on. I love how casual you said, yeah. So I did this, and that didn't work. So then I did this, and that didn't work. So that's just a wonderful spirit of I'm going to win, and as long as I don't quit, I can never lose. I'm just going to keep at this. But I always think that eternal learning, and my preferred way is to read. And so I always like to ask guests, is there a book that you've read that when you put down, you said, holy moly, that opened my eyes to a new path, a new tactic, a new way? Is there anything you could recommend to people listening that are entrepreneurs, or maybe they're wanting to become entrepreneurs and they've still got that fear of making that leap?
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of books, like I love reading too. Like I love reading biographies.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now I'm reading the Elon Musk biography. I really loved the Phil Knight Shoe Dog.
Wonderful.
I liked the Tony Hsieh. I think it was, and the Walter Isaacson Elon Musk book was incredible. So like I just love reading about people and seeing what makes them so great, and also their flaws, and you just realize like they're just human, but you learn aspects about them. So I don't know if books have ever made like a monumental change in my life. I think they give me new ideas, or if you're trying to get better at sales, you read a sales book, you'll probably get better if you implement it. So that's kind of how I see it. And just keeps life entertaining and interesting reading about other people. I did take a course, like personal development is something that I've always really enjoyed. So I took a course when I was 18 called Landmark Education, which was definitely, I would say, monumental in kind of getting out of my own way of being like, one day I can be an entrepreneur once I have money or once I'm respected. So I think a lot of it's like mindset, a lot of it's trauma based. So I think a lot of it is just like getting a lot of that out of the way and taking responsibility. And so that's what I've experienced to take the leap that I took.
I 100% agree on biographies because it's like the Netflix version of a business course that you actually enjoy reading. And I haven't read Isaacson's Elon Musk book, but I read the previous one. Outstanding, just mind-bending, outstanding. And I'm with you that you get to see that these are just normal people. They just happen to dream bigger. That's the difference. I mean, they're action takers for sure, but they just, their dreams are huge. They're absolutely huge. I have to rewind back because you just said something that is starting to become a theme on this podcast. And you said it's trauma based. And my VP of finance and we talk so much about this. Like I have this theory and I'm starting to talk to guests about this where, no trauma in your life, especially we're talking usually childhood or early adulthood, no trauma doesn't maybe necessarily lend itself to a really driven individual who's driven to win and perform and achieve. Obviously, too much trauma, and you're in therapy your entire life, and you're trying to work through all that horrific stuff.
Yeah.
And it's the reason I say this because the books that you talked about, Elon Musk, I don't think you said Steve Jobs, but Steve Jobs and Phil Knight, like there's a certain amount of trauma, like there's like this sweet spot of trauma that people have, that these really high achievers have in their life, that is enough to have a chip on your shoulder. I'm going to prove something to somebody, even if it's myself, and it just seems to be a theme. And I've talked with guests. I just recently interviewed somebody, and I literally brought this up, and she said, "Oh yeah, my dad abandoned me when I was young." I'm like, there it is, and she's killing it in business, absolutely killing it. But she's also learning to work past that, and that someday, you have to emotionally let that go and achieve for other reasons. But if you're comfortable, if you could kind of speak to how you, not the trauma, but if there was trauma and kind of how you've seen that affect your drive or your life.
Yeah, I'm pretty open. I mean, definitely when I was younger, I think the worst period of my life is probably when I was like 13, and definitely experienced bullying.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, again, it's all relative. There are some people
Sure.
that experience intense. So I got bullied. I remember the bully as well. I remember we had a class field trip. I think we had this class field trip, and I asked out this girl that I really liked, and then he made fun of me, and I cried in the bathroom, and people saw me cry, and I was like, like
when you're 13, that's huge.
yeah. So it's like, you're definitely, and you feel like no one likes you, you did something wrong. And that definitely probably impacted me when it came to dating. And I didn't feel comfortable with women until I took that personal development course when I was 18. So, and that perhaps is why I built a dating app. Perhaps I wanted to just show myself that I can meet women, or I can be myself around women, or I can just build something cool, and I can, maybe it's like laugh at him. And I remember he added me on LinkedIn. I rejected him. Just like, I don't want to. Like, you're the reason.
Yeah.
Maybe I should thank him.
I was gonna say, Zach, there's probably a thank you there. Yeah.
But I think everyone, usually people that, like you said, they have some sort of chip. So of course I do, to prove that I can do something really cool and not be dependent on an employer. I could build something that I love and just be like, I did this.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my like drive. And I've always, since doing that course, I've always had that like drive. Like, I want to do something that like can be great and allow me to be financially independent and impact a lot of people.
Yeah. Thanks for openly sharing that too. It's becoming a theme, and I just think there's something to it, and I don't think we should run from it. I think we should embrace it and allow it to fuel us. And then at some point, hopefully we can work through that. But I don't know if we ever do as people. I certainly can point to things in my life that, that's probably why I act the way I do and drive and push. And all right. So 2 more questions. And this first one is not meant to be morbid at all. I don't 3 or 4 recordings ago, someone's like, that's really morbid. I'm like, no, it's not meant to be. If we were to fast forward to the end of your full rich life, and you've lived this amazing life, and it's your funeral, and you're looking at this from above, and you're watching a loved one read your eulogy, and they could only say 3 words, what words would you hope that they would use to describe you at the end of your life?
Yeah, I would say passionate, driven, and love.
That's great. You probably answered that faster than anybody on this podcast. I love that. You know who you are and where you want to go.
I thought about the 3 words when you were asking the question. I was like, I need to be prepared.
That's great. That's great. And then lastly, before we people find out how they can get a hold of you and follow you, if you had this magic wand and you could wave this magic wand and we all wake up tomorrow and the world is different in one material way, in just one way, but a profound way, how would the world be different according to Zach?
I would just say like accepting of others.
Yeah. Also answer that probably faster than anybody. That's great. I love it. Well, hey, the most important question is, how do people follow you, connect to you, watch your story, which is just amazing at this point? And then obviously Fiteroff, I'm sure they can just download the app. But how would they follow you and find you?
Yeah. So me personally, my name is Zach Schleien. On Instagram, it's Zach08590. Then I'm also on LinkedIn. And then Fiteroff, it's, if you just search Fiteroff, it's available in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
Cool. And we'll put where they can follow you. We'll put that in the show notes too, so people can just click it and find you really easy. Well, I think you're an incredible dude, and I just you got this really just just this laid back affect about you that's just cool and infectious. And
Thanks.
I think you're going to achieve amazing things. I know you're going to achieve. You already have, and it's only up from here. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your day and sharing your knowledge with the listeners. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.